So shall we start?
Yeah, I think we can.
Okay. So first of all, thank you everyone for joining us on this Saturday afternoon, and many thanks to Professor Sebastian for accepting our invitation and being here. It's a pleasure for all of us. And so, as you know, Let's Talk Tattva is a philosophy discussion forum, which also has an informal discussion group called Philosophy and Everything. We try to organize discussions and talks by scholars of philosophy and informal discussions by students through everything that externalizes life, from books, music, art, cinema, to anything that makes us a person. Today's talk by Professor Sebastian is a second talk in the series called Philosophy with Scholars. So earlier we had Professor Satyan Sharma from Punjab University. So, what is the state of Indian philosophy is not hidden from anyone in Indian academia, and here it's a little attempt to step up and to provide exposure to rich and diverse philosophies of India. To understand the essence of Indian philosophy, one need to look beyond the idea of 6+3 schools, isolated systems. And here we have Professor Sebastian to bring us to take us through in this journey. Professor Sebastian is a professor of Indian philosophy at Indian Institute of Technology, IIT Bombay. He holds his MA first rank with two gold medals and PhD degrees in Indian philosophy from Banaras Hindu University, Varanasi. And he did his postdoctoral research at University of Bristol, UK. He was a Dart Scholar Fellow at University of Erfurt, Germany, and an Hermes Mundus visiting scholar at the University of Warsaw, Poland. He was honored three times with Excellence in Teaching Award at IIT Bombay. He is an established scholar and researcher in Indian philosophy and comparative philosophy. He has published more than 120 research papers in refereed international journals. Among his many books, the most received is The Cloud of Nothingness, published internationally by Springer Nature. He's also a member of Society for Asian and Comparative Philosophy and also a member for Society for Intercultural Philosophy, Cologne. So, believing in the power of dialogue, let us invite Professor Sebastian uh, to make this happen, this talk on rationality and Indian philosophies. Thank you for joining us. So, over to you, Professor Sebastian.
Thank you, Himanshu, for honoring me and bringing me to this forum. I see 39 people have joined in our session, and I'm very happy. I'm sorry for scholars for not honoring the commitment of 24th of April. I had some other emergency meeting and I had to be out of Mumbai, so I could not make it on that day. And this is only the one specimen, some taste of something. And if it is palatable and enjoyable to you, then I'll come back with the more serious discussions. Himanshu was telling me to say, to expose something about the Buddhist studies, Buddhism per se, Buddhist philosophy. I'm leaving it for a full length, full-fledged treatment of Buddhist philosophy some other time. And similarly, I will not deal with any particular system per se in this initial talk. And if you find it good, then we will come back. Otherwise, let us leave it like that. Himanshu, can I share my screen so that whatever I say, our friends can also read in their screen?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Of course.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
sir.
So I will share. There is somebody has raised his hand. You want to say something? Who is that? Gautam? No, maybe
No
by
problem, sir,
mistake.
by mistake. Sorry.
Okay. Can you see Himanshu something? Himanshu, are you seeing some
Yes, sir.
things on the
Yes.
screen?
Yes, sir.
So, can you read it?
Yes, sir. Can you just make it a little bigger?
Can you?
Yes, sir. It's fine now.
Uh, some little more bigger?
Yes, sir. It would be good.
No?
Yes, sir. Yes, it's fine.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So, I will, it's better that my friends, young friends, are looking at what I am saying. wherever there is to be an emphasis, I'll give. But look at the screen and, if you can follow me, it will be wonderful. You know, I am happy that Himanshu has given me rationality in Indian philosophies. And that philosophy stands, that word philosophy stands for. In my talk is that there are many philosophies in Indian thought. And let us honor that there are many systems, many thoughts, many positions, and it is not Indian philosophy in singular. It should be Indian philosophies. There are many varied convictions, philosophical or otherwise. And Indian thought has never been spiritual alone. And today when you go and talk to people, when I had the PhD interview on the other day in Mumbai University, I was the external examiner for the PhD entrance examinations. And the moment you speak of Indian philosophy, people think that it's all about spirituality and spiritual or otherworldly nature, which are talked about or discussed in Indian philosophy. It's not that alone. Spirituality is part and parcel of any human endeavor. You can't, any culture for that matter will have spiritual elements in them. But to brand Indian philosophy as spiritual alone will be a mistake. But the major part of the search for Indian thought was this worldly, naturalistic, and rational. And let us not negate this worldly, naturalistic, and rational elements in Indian philosophy. And let us not brand Indian philosophy as spiritual alone. If I do that, I think I will be doing some sort of disservice to Indian philosophy. I spent last 3 decades in understanding or to trying to understand what Indian philosophy is all about. So my presentation, my position is an outcome of my study and my thinking. That's it. It's a disservice to Indian philosophies to say and assert that it is a system of thought that researches the only otherworldly and spiritual matters. We don't deny it. It researches some aspect of it, researches, but it is not the only subject matter of Indian philosophies. There is a mistakenly perceived view that Indian philosophies have been all about spiritual and inner and the spiritual and inner life. For instance, I'm quoting, the characteristics of Indian thought is that it has paid greater attention to inner man than the outer world. And my attempt has been, and it will be also, to show that it is not the case. This is just opposite. And that has been my attempt all throughout. Because Indian philosophy is such a vast, large pool to see, and you will never reach anywhere. Even a small iota of Indian philosophy, I think you can reach in your lifetime. And when you spend your time, you reach it's a big gamut of big ocean of Indian philosophizing. And to brand the entire ocean as this pattern or that pattern, and I think that is an disservice to Indian philosophizing. That's what I wanted to bring home as the first point. And let me bring to you something else, which I always insist. This is the introductory lecture I give to my students in India, in IIT Bombay, when they come for their first year master's degree. And 2 traditions of Indian philosophy. And this is very important as far as the Indian mind is to be understood. One finds that there are 2 traditions in Indian philosophical culture, religious heritage. The Rishi tradition of the Vedic people and the Muni tradition of the non-Vedic people. The Muni tradition is also known as the Shramana Parampara. The Muni tradition gives importance to the order of the recluse, the sannyasis, the sannyasins. Scholars have tried to analyze the cause of popularity of the sannyasins in Indian tradition, and they point out that the recluse or the sannyasis, the sannyasins, sannyasi was the indigenous order of the non-believers in the Vedic people and their tradition. And I mean every word of it. Okay. It seems that non-believers had already made their appearance in the Rig Veda. But by the time of the Upanishads, they had been incorporated into the Vedic tradition as forest dwellers and ascetics. What I wanted to say that we have two traditions, the Rishi tradition and the Muni tradition. And as far as I am concerned, the Muni tradition is antedating the Rishi tradition. And there is an assimilation taking place in due course of time. And the time of the Upanishads, the ascetic, the Muni tradition gets absorbed or incorporated in the Upanishads. It has been argued that the renunciation may have been common among those not identified with Vedic society, and the Yadis, Munis, Shramanas are quoted as among the earliest renounces. I wish you read Professor G.C. Pandey's book, Buddhist History, and this is a fabulous work which Professor Pandey, he taught in Allahabad University, Professor Pandey's book. The Rakade coexistence of the Rishis and Munis and the Muni tradition of the non-Vedic people found its way into the Aryan society by being accepted as the order of the recluse. Thus, it should be, let me, before reading the letter of the passage, let me tell my friends one important aspect. India is a land of the few, is where many races are fused into one unity. We are not one race. We have many races in Indian what we can say, Indian heritage. The oldest, India was not the settling place of anybody for that matter. We know that the first elements of human settlement, human beings, began to flourish in sub-Saharan areas. And the people migrated from the sub-Sahara to different parts of the world, the migration of the people. And the first people to settle in the subcontinent, the first race to settle in the subcontinent, whom you can see today in Andaman, especially Nicobar Islands. And they were some of the Aboriginal people of India. And that's the first race we can trace them as the first dwellers or settlers in India. Whatever may be the religious affiliations, whatever may be what people say, there's the first race. And the second race is the Dravidian origin of the people, sub-Saharan people, coming from the Mesopotamian area. And they were the second settlers. And the third settlers are the people of the Mongoloid tribe, the Sino-Tibetan family, those who are in the northeast and near the Himalayan belt, the Mongoloid people. And the fourth settlers are the Aryan settlers. And there are two theories today, out of India theory and the invasion theory. Whatever you may say, that my position of studying of Indian subcontinent for the last 3 decades, I would say that everyone in India are settlers in Indian subcontinent. All of them have come. It was not inherited some 50,000 years ago. So please take that as a point of discovery and search. There are two theories, an invasion theory, out of India theory. And I don't want to subscribe to invasion or out of India theory. I will say that everyone in Indian subcontinent are settlers coming from the sub-Saharan desert at the first time. And that was the origin of the human species, Homo sapiens, when it came to exist in the world. Come back to the quote I was reading. The found its way into the Aryan society being accepted as the order of the recluse. Thus, it would seem that ashramas, especially the last two, were constituted to accommodate the inquisitive and Protestant forest hermits and wandering ascets into the Upanishadic society. This is something, a wonderful book by Sharma, and I wish that you read this book. And it has got many insights. So what I said in the first beginning, we have many philosophies. Second, I said we have two traditions, mainly, and we have 4 races, if you want to take the Indian people altogether. Now,
Let us come to the third point, which I would like to bring to the notice of my friends who are with me today. Philosophy in India, the three terms and their implications. And this is something not heartening. When I go to Indian universities and the departments of philosophy, where the emphasis is given to other terms, not the first important thing, which had been the literature for many centuries. And let me bring your attention to that aspect. Or soul-searching examination of the rational inquiry of Indian thought reveals that the term used for philosophy was Anviksiki. And that was the word which was meant for philosophy some 24 centuries ago. That means it was prevalent at that time. That means it must have been in use for many years, a long period of time. Anviksiki. And Banaras Hindu University is a philosophy journal is named after Anviksiki. So that's at least BHU is recognizing this term as the term for philosophy. Kautilya, in his Arthashastra, we know Kautilya's time is 4th century BC, Arthashastra, while enumerating on the branches of learning, Vidya, mentions Anviksiki, Trayi, Vartha, Dandaniti. Anviksiki, Trayi, Vartha, Dandaniti, Cha, Iti, Vidya. These are the learning, subjects which everyone is supposed to study. That is Arthashastra, chapter 2, book 1, chapter 2, verse 1. These are the three things. Anviksiki, Trayi, Vartha, and Dandaniti. And Anviksiki is the systematic inquiry without alluding any scriptural or spiritual leanings, as it is the labor of human intellect and reasoning. Friends, we said there are 4 types of vidyas, learning or disciplines, or the subjects which are people study. One is Anviksiki. Second is Trayi. The emphasis was given, I'm coming to the second one, Trayi. Emphasis was given to the 3 Vedas, Veda Trayi, Rik, Yaju, and Sam. Otherwise, it's much later edition. So, Veda Trayi, the Trivedis, the Tripatis, the Trayis, these are very important. And Kautilya mentions Trayi for the scriptural studies, spiritual learnings, scriptural hermeneutics, and whatever is supposed to be is with the Vedic literature is coming in the Trayi. That is also a discipline. And there is also Vartha. Vartha stands for, commerce, agriculture, business, transactions, and whatever make you prosperous in terms of economic as well as financial terms are coming under Vartha. That also is a study branch which Kautilya mentions in his Arthashastra. Then comes the Dandaniti. And Dandaniti is the jurisprudence, it is international relations, it is your policy in the home affairs, justice, and whatever you can think of in the administrative level, that is in the Dandaniti, the jurisprudence, everything comes in that one. So we had in Kautilyan understanding, he mentions Anviksiki, Trayi, Vartha, Dandaniti, Cha, Iti, Vidya. And these are the study materials or disciplines which people are supposed to endeavor. And what happens with Anviksiki? Anviksiki, as I said, is the systematic inquiry without alluding any scripture or spiritual meaning, as it is the labor of human intellect and reasoning or logic. Anviksiki is not that which is supernaturally given, not divinely revealed. Those things will be the subject matter of Trayi. And among the disciplines of Anviksiki, Kautilya mentions Sankhya as the first among the 3, and others are Yoga and Lokayata. And one note for Yoga, it's not a Yoga of the Yoga Sutra of Patanjali, this is not the Patanjali Yoga. There was a heritage of that yogic tradition in India, which the Tantric traditions and the other ascetic traditions had as their they are subject to matter, and yoga, though it is a term today we use, Patanjali's Yoga Sutra, there is an archaic yogic form, and which was an inquiry of a different nature altogether. Okay, so I'm not going to that one. So other one is Lokayuta. So Sankhya, Yoga, and Lokayuta. These are the what you can say hardcore rationalistic enterprises in Anviksiki, which Kautilya mentions in the 4th century. The critical examining with means of proper arguments is done by Anviksiki. The critical examining with the means of proper arguments, Anviksiki. Okay, Balabale Chaidasam Hedupir Anvikshikamana. That's what Kautilya says. Seeing dharma and adharma is from the injunctions of 3, from the Vedic studies, you get that one. Understanding the gain and loss of wealth, commerce, finance is done by Varta. And good and bad policy is understood by the study of Dandaniti. And these are the disciplines and studies which people spoke for some 24 centuries ago. Anviksiki is ever accepted to be the lamp of all branches of learning. Whether it is 3, where it is Varta, where it is Dandaniti, what should be always the guiding light? That should be your philosophical, rationalistic approach of Anviksiki. Anviksiki is the ever accepted to be the lamp of all branches of learning, the means of all kinds of activities and basis of all virtues. Pratipaha sarva vidyanam, upayaka sarva karmanam, ashrayaha sarva dharmanam, shashvat Anviksiki mata. That's what Kautilya says. So whatever you do should be ignited and guided by this Anviksiki. This Anviksiki had a separate domain from the scriptural and religious studies. And that's what I would like to emphasize today in front of my friends here. And other 2 terms, which you all know, that is, one is Darshana and other one is Mother. Other one is Mother. Can you see me?
Yes, sir, we are here.
Can I stop for a minute so that you know if somebody wants to say something?
Of course,
No?
as you wish. Yes.
Yeah. Otherwise, it becomes a monotonous. I stop sharing so that I can see you too. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
The Praveen is sitting and smiling there. So that I can see how many are present also. No, about Manshu, 57 people are there so far. Yeah. It's too boring or what? Arif?
Sir, what is the 3rd term you mentioned? The 3 terms for philosophy, Anvikshiki, Trayi I got, and the last one?
No, not philosophy. They are
Anvikshiki and Darshana.
No.
Anvikshiki, Darshana, and the 3rd one?
Mata. Opinion.
Mata. Okay.
Opinion. And you know, in the traditional texts of the Sanskrit literature, you will see only when they say Jaina Mate, in Jain opinion. It doesn't mean religion. Huh? Jain Mate, both Mate, according to Buddhist opinion. So that opinion, that mother, that was some sort of philosophizing which they wanted to give emphasis to. And you know, philosophy had 2-3 terms, but the most important term is Anviksiki. Second thing which people speak everywhere is darshan. Okay, and some places they call it something else also. That is not. Some places I have seen. I think in Pune University and all, they say it is something like a tattva. Tattva means reality. Huh? Tattva. It doesn't mean the logical epistemological inquiry alone. Huh? So what happens in philosophy? It's more of an inquiry, more of an epistemological inquiry, more of a metaphysical inquiry. And if you brand it as only metaphysics, tattva, then I think there is something wrong with our understanding of philosophy. That's it. And the third term is the Anviksiki, Darshana, and Mat. And Mat is more vibrant in many sense because it's an opinion. Mat has got another meaning also, religion. But it has something much more than that. It's an opinion, the way you think, your viewpoints, your positions. And you know, the Buddhists, especially when it comes to Madhyamika system, they are against positioning of systems like this. Yeah, they wanted to attack every position which holds that this is the way, this is the system, this is the way you have to philosophize. So Nagarjuna would say, Shunyata Sarvadrishtina, means you have to abnegate any holding on to any position. That's it. Okay? Himanshu?
Yes,
Should I continue?
yes, sir. We can. And if anyone has any doubt, so they can ask after this session.
Gautam, should I continue?
Yes, sir, definitely, sir.
Ayush?
Yes, sir.
How are you feeling? Still
Fine.
going or what?
No, it's good, sir. Sir, we can continue ahead.
Okay then. Come back. Do you see the screen now?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. We can see.
Yeah. So my friend was asking me which is the second and third time. The second is Darshana, which everyone knows. Okay, Darshana, we are not going to highlight anything on that one. And the third one is Mata. This you can see. And this means the third term that was used for philosophy in India was Mata in general. Mata means opinion, thought, therefore a doctrine or a theory. Indians also use the term Mata for religion. For Indians, regard religion as a theory of reality guiding our life and also the way or a plan of life according to that theory. That's it. This is the third term. Now let us come to the implication of these three terms. India is an immensely diverse country with many distinct pursuits, vastly different convictions and divergent customs and varied viewpoints. India is a land of argumentative traditions, and you remember that book by Amartya Sen, The Argumentative Indian. The Vedas may be full of hymns and religious invocations, but they also tell stories, speculate about the world, and ask questions where the true argumentative and rational propensity could be seen. The basic doubt concerns the very creation of the world. Did someone make it? Was it a spontaneous emergence? And is there a God who knows what really happened? These are the inquiries in the in the hymns of the Vedas, especially in the Rigvedic mantras. You can find it. These questions are there, and they're trying to answer these queries and questions and searches. Besides the Vedic tradition, India was a land of many different convictions and viewpoints, which we call heterodoxy, Nastika. And again, I'm against calling Nastika for those systems. I have my own reasons. But let us go with whatever has been given to us, Nastika, heterodoxy. The reach of Indian heterodoxy is remarkably extensive. We can find heterodox voices even in the Ramayana. Javali. Javali is a person, a Pandit. Javali is listening as an example to it. Javali, some places is Javali, is a Pandit who gets considerable space in Ramayana. He opposes Lord Ram in many ways and calls Rama's actions foolish. Before he is persuaded to withdraw all his allegations, Javali gets time enough in Ramayana to explain in detail that there is no afterworld, nor any religious practice for attaining that, and that the commandments about the worship of gods, yajna, sacrifice, gifts, penance, all that have been laid down in the Shastras by clever people just to rule over other people. And these are the statements which Javali makes in Ramayana. What I wanted to say, that, opposing divergent opinions had a place in the literature which you see in our Indian tradition. And Javali is an example in Ramayana. Further, the roots of skepticism in India go back to a long way. And it would be wrong to consider Indian philosophy as all about religion and spirituality, as I said at the outset, ignoring skepticism and materialism. As Dayakrishna repeatedly, you know who is Professor Dayakrishna. Dayakrishna was one of our tallest philosophers of Indian philosophy in the last century. Dayakrishna repeatedly said, Indian philosophy can hardly be characterized as spiritual in character. Thus, philosophy is not a wisdom supernaturally, means from God, infused into your souls due to some superhuman illumination from God. Neither it is a wisdom wholly spontaneous and unconscious like the instincts or natural instincts of the animals. But Anviksiki, philosophy, is the wisdom of human as human, which she acquires by the labor of her intellect and reason. This is a wisdom or knowledge which humans gain with difficulty, and those who seek it are called the philosophers, or the one who is an inquirer or a seeker, whether it is in any branches of systems of thought or anything. Indian philosophy have been argumented down through the ages. The heterodox propensity of Indian thought is enormous, and it was only because of its buoyance and resilience that author traditions too become ever more thought-provoking, as it was, as Griena stated, the going power of the heterodox beliefs. Friends, from 5th century BC to roughly around the 5th, 6th century AD, this area, this land, subcontinent, was known as the land of the Buddhists. And where what you want to call as heterodoxy was taking upper hand. Intellectual discussions were based or dominated by these people, whether it is Jains, Jains' contribution in philosophy, and where it is the Indian materialist thinkers, where it is the Indian skeptics, where it is Ajivikas, where it is other traditions. And from 5th century BC to 5th century AD, 6th century AD, the Buddhists dominated the intellectual arena. And what happened, because of the sharpness and the the intellectual acumen of the heterodox traditions, the orthodox tradition also started to sharpen itself. And we should give credit to the heterodox traditions, which brought out the Indian philosophical schools or systems which you called as Shat Darshanas. And today, when you speak, you speak of Shat Darshanas, 6 systems of thought. And it is not Shad, it is much more than that. There are other traditions also. And that's why Professor Hirianna, whom we all regard as one of the stalwarts of Indian philosophizing, Hirianna argued that the growing power of heterodox beliefs in the first century of the present era, which account for the attempts made in the Vedanta to systematize the teaching of the Upanishads. And we know what happens. There were contradictions, and it was need for the hour to sharpen the Upanishadic teachings. There comes a Badarayana who writes the Brahma Sutras in 555 verses. And after that, people start making commentaries on Badarayana's Brahma Sutra. And we know that the systematization of the Vedantic studies take place after Badarayana's systematic treatment of the Upanishadic teaching in one volume, one text. And the commentators come. But the beauty of Indian tradition is that the commentators have their own specific freedom to interpret the way they want it. So you have an Advaitic tradition. So you have a Vishishtadvaitic tradition. You have a Dvaita tradition. You have a Dvaita Advaita tradition. or Bheda tradition, you have a Shuddha Veda tradition, and you have a Achintya Veda tradition. And Vedantic interpretations are not one, but six. 6 schools are there among the Vedanta traditions. And this is what you have to appreciate. And the moment when a student of philosophy speaks about Vedanta as one system of thought, I think that shows her or his ignorance. Even the Vedantic thought is interpreted and explained in different schools in different ways. And that's the beauty of Indianness, I'm telling you. And it is not a monolithic, insulated thinking of Indians. Even the Vedantic system, which is sharpened because of the attack of the heterodox movements, and they also had their own divergences. So Indian philosophizing, Indian philosophy per se is not one. It's a multitude of thinking and thinking patterns. Let us not forget that Tamil, Sanskrit, Pali, and Prakrit, the 4 Indian classical languages, have a large literature in atheistic and agnostic tradition than that exists in any other classical languages like Greek, Latin, Hebrew, and Arabic. And our classical languages, we have more agnostics and atheistic literature. I hope we know what is agnosticism and atheism. Atheism doesn't believe in the existence of a God. Whereas agnostic positions, the agnostics, who are the agnostics in Indian philosophy? They are not a Gnostic. The agnostics are the Ajnanavadins, and we had a strong tradition of Ajnanavadins, agnostics in Indian philosophy. And their role in sharpening the arguments of Indian philosophizing is also very important, which we don't talk in the Indian universities. Neither the BA, MA students of philosophy never heard of the Ajnanavadins of Indian tradition. And that's it. Let us leave it there. Then let me come to something else, the Arthashastram and the Ayurveda. And I wish that you read my latest paper on Ayurveda, Shadows and Realities. Ayurveda, there are three in Arthashastram and Ayurveda. Ayurveda, we have the Charak Samhita, you have the Shushu Samhita, and you have the Vakpata Samhita. And Vakpata has 2, Ashtanga Kriya and Ashtanga Samuchaya. And this is not one system of Indian medical practice. I have been spending some 7-8 years only on doing research in Indian medical practice. Not practice is what people do. Going to the original texts, Charaka Samhita, Sushul Samhita, and Vakpatas, both the texts, and they are with me. And that those texts are revealing many things of Indian spiritual, Indian material, Indian economic, and Indian life, ayuhu, life systems, how they, Charaka envisage things. And mind you, Charaka doesn't come from this part of India. Charaka comes from the other side of Kashmir. And he looks at the Charaka Samhita, what happens? He is looking at the Himalayas and he is admiring. So he comes from the other side of Kashmir, whatever you call it as Peshawar or Purushapura or whatever you want to say. And Charak comes from there. And there are many things to discuss about that. And I wish you study this one. And I have something to say something more about rationality, reasoning, and theory of causation. This is very important. And I think I have taken 14 minutes. I will not do justice to this portion this time because I have to discuss about many things. And I think I will not say anything about this one, but you can see a little bit of what I have written down here. And coming to the self-causation, and it takes time to explain it. And I have to highlight on 2 important Vedic thinkers, Akabashana and Mahidas Aitreya. These are very important philosophers of India. We need some more time to discuss about it. And after that, what happens is external causation, where you have the naturalism, which we will discuss later on. After that, skepticism and other things are coming, which I will highlight maybe later on. Ajivikas, and I wanted to say Ajivikas and the skeptics and all, and that these are the important hidden aspects of Indian philosophy. And I think we will discuss about it at a later time. since 40 minutes are over and my throat has gone down, I think I will stop it here for opening for next questions. Yeah, Himanshu, I am stopping it here, and we will come up later on. We can manage questions.
Okay, sir. No, so, we can have questions. You can raise hands. Anyone, if you want to ask any doubts, questions.
Sir, thank you for your presentation. I would like to ask one thing from you, that you were talking about Daya Krishna. So he has a book named Indian Philosophy, a Counter Perspective. So what is basically he is trying to say? Actually, I was reading that book, and he's trying to say some things about Vedanta and everything. So what are your? I have not read it fully, but I am.
With the counter perspective, I can show you that book. 1 second, Ayush. You want this contrary thinking? This is what you are thinking about? Are you speaking about this one?
You're mute. You're mute, Ayush. You were mute, Ayush.
Not this one, not this one, sir. There is another book by him.
These all are collections of his essays. And even the counter perspective also, 3 myths of Indian philosophy, Krishna's 1967 book. Okay. And these all are the papers which he published in his lifetime, and he has a point to make. He wants to get out, that he was an analytic philosopher, trained in analytic philosophy in the West, and who deeply, intimately studied Indian philosophy, especially the Nyayikas. And his heart and soul was with Nyaya system, if you analyze him very carefully. And where he gave emphasis to the Indian epistemological, you see, Daya Krishnaji used to say that, if you say, I say something, you should know how I will understand that. That was very important for him. It is not what, in the metaphysical domains are what and that. But if you say what and that, it is like, this is the thing, this is the Brahman. So what way I will come to know that one? The how question was very much important for Daya Krishna. How I know? How can you? Because justification, how I will know? That was very much there. So Daya Krishna, you can't consider him as a metaphysician like any other analytic thinkers. He was more into asking questions. How I will know certain things? What claim are you giving? He's ready to accept, and if you can philosophically establish that thing, even. That doesn't mean that he was against the tradition. He studied the tradition intimately. But Daya Krishna cannot be what you can say, branded as with one simple stroke of a brush. He has many facets. I think you are coming from Rajasthan University. Did you do anything in Rajasthan University?
Yes, sir. I did my BA from there.
Daya Krishna just spent all his time there only teaching.
Yes.
There were three great people. One is Daya Krishna, Vishwambar Pahi, and Professor Patnagar.
Vishwambar Pai ji died just in 2020, just before COVID. I was there at that time.
And R.S. Patnagar, you never knew him?
No, I knew him, but I have never studied from these people. No? They retired long back, but I know them. Vishwambar Pai used to give lectures when I was there. He came for a special lecture there.
And tell you something, Ayush, if it is not boring for others. See, Vishwambar Pai is an original thinker of Indian philosophy. He is one of the Indian philosophers who went to US olden days and did a PhD in logic. in Vishnuprabhi, and came back. I taught in accent. And Vishnuprabhi, when he visited us, our department, as a visiting scholar, he visited my department where Himanshu and Gautama. And he revealed some important aspect. He tells that India has got two traditions. He's thinking of epistemological traditions that he's saying. One is of the Yadnavalkya tradition, other one is of Kanad tradition. Kanad, the Vaiseshika system, was a person of more of empirical epistemological tradition, Kanad. Everything he wants to understand in a different way altogether. Whereas Yadnavalkya tradition went into the spiritual realms, Atman, inquiring into the Atman. So there was a conflict between Kanad tradition and the Yadnavalkya tradition. And at the end of the day, Yadnavalkya tradition superseded and subjugated the Kanad tradition. Had Kanad tradition taken upper hand, Indian philosophy would have been a different Indian philosophy altogether. That's it, Vishnuprabha's understanding. And about this, Professor Pradeep Gokhale has written. There is a paper about Vishnuprabha and his contribution to Indian Nyaya Vaiseshika. In this, Professor Pradeep Gokhale is mentioning. If you can read that one, you will get more. Yeah.
Anyone? Do you have any doubts?
There is a question from Praveen in the chat box.
Anything in the chat box? Yeah, Himanshu, you can read out for me.
Sir, can I ask you a question?
Please, who is that?
Sir, I am a professor of English in Delhi University and in a college in Delhi University, and Himanshu happens to be a student of that college, Ramanujan College. And sir, I'm an associate professor in the Department of English. So this is really not my field. And I was not going to say anything because I thought I'd sound extremely foolish and out of my depth. But I can't help because your lecture has been an absolute eye-opener for me in many ways. And if correct me if I'm wrong, so what you're trying to stress is that Indian philosophy is not necessarily and certainly not to do with spirituality. If that is what it is, then, and if it is a systemic learning and an inquiry, is a system of systemic learning and inquiry, then does that inquiry also include the irrational as well as the rational? And what is the relationship between this irrational and spirituality, if I may ask? I know I'm being very foolish.
No. There is a profoundness in your question, and I appreciate that one. And also coming from Himanshu's college, thank you for asking, Professor Ramalya.
So he is not from my college. I am from his college. He is my day professor.
No. You are the common point of reference now. So
yes.
On Himanshu, Professor Nirmali, what happens whenever I go to speak something about Indian philosophy, people will come with some yogic practice,
Yes.
some spirituality. I'm not denying that is not part of Indian philosophizing. That is there. But that's not the only thing. The PhD theses which come from the universities for evaluation all deal with this sort of some sort of esotericism. And esoteric practices should go to the religious studies department, not the philosophy department. And the philosophy department, anything to do with the philosophizing needs a justification. And there should be what praman, kim pramanam, what is the proof for that? That's very important. And if that proof is, you cannot just state things, it was like that, this is in the yogic practice. You can't. Philosophizing needs some proof. And if that is not satiated, that is not given to us, then I think we are failing. That's why, Indian logic is very robust. Indian logic is very robust. The first classical logicians were the Nyayikas. But the middle Indian logic is of the Buddhists. And Buddhists did not want proof anything spiritually. So you take a Nagarjuna, you take a Asanga, Vasubandhu, Dignaga, Dharmakirti, you take name, come up to 11th century, Dhanashramitra. Their main, what you can say, is not to say that it is spiritually, it is needed. Their employer is to prove things epistemologically. What is the epistemologic claim you give to say so? And that, today, as I stand on the 30th of April 2022, the moment Indian philosophy someone speaks, they ignore the rich tradition of this argumentative Indianness and come with some weird understanding of Indian philosophizing. And for me, that's a disservice. I'm not telling that that was not there. That is also there. But Indian philosophy is more robust than and all other traditions. And Professor, skepticism is the begin. Skeptic in the entire world history of ideas. Skepticism is the contribution of the Indians, not of anybody else. Skepticism per se comes from India. And today, when I teach in the departments, skepticism as such goes to some weak thinker called Hero. But Pura got his idea from Indian skeptics called Sanjaya, who went to argue things in the four-cornered logic. And you forget the Sanjaya's contribution in the 6th century BC. And this is something what I want to say. Indian philosophy is not some mystical experience alone. It is this worldly, here worldly. Your experience is counting. And that is what. So these, our students, when they study deeply, intimately the Indian texts, I think there will be a different phase of Indian philosophizing. That doesn't mean that I am negating the spiritual element. That is there, that is part of it. Any culture will have spiritual elements and transcendence that we cannot. But please don't deny the logical, epistemological search of Indians.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you to both of you, sir, for this talk. And now let us take some question from Praveen. Praveen says, dear sir, like Daya Krishna, Matilal, even Arindam Chakravarti, etc., they all are also trained in Western tradition. So what you think about the importance or need of Western bend for rational understanding of Indian thought? Ask
See,
Praveen.
Who Praveen? Which Praveen? M. Praveen.
Yes, sir.
Praveen, Praveen, let us not geographically bind philosophizing. We should not say Indian philosophy. We should not African philosophy. Philosophizing doesn't take place in a geographical boundary. And there is a philosophical perennial philosophy. We call it in Latin philosophia perennis, the perennial philosophy. A person sitting in America or Africa or Antarctica or in India or in IIT Bombay, his philosophy or her philosophy is philosophy. And at the moment, when I go to America and I do write something, you will call me Indian philosopher or American philosopher, geographically. Please don't make that one. So that is my first point to make. Second point, philosophy is a common, it doesn't have geographical boundaries, human thought, human thinking. Second point, B.K. Matilal, Arindam Chakrabarti, Daya Krishna. B.K. Matilal was hardcore Indian. He trained in traditional Nyaya system, though he taught in Oxford. Arindam Chakrabarti knows Nyaya system very intimately, though he got trained under P.F. Stoss in Oxford. That's a different question. He's an analytic thinker. But his Indianness, his philosophizing, and sharpening explanations of Indian philosophy is very heartening. And Daya Krishna was a critical thinker. So philosophy, you know what happens. If Praveen is a critical thinker, don't buy anything coming from my mouth. You should have, don't take anything which is coming, lying down there. And if you're taking things as lying down as it is coming, handing down to you, then that's most unphilosophical in Indian tradition. No, philosophy cannot be handed down. Philosophy is something you have to critically understand and you have to have your own positions. And handing down of something, and that is most unphilosophical. That's it. So don't call our people, those who are making some mark in philosophizing India, as Westernly trained people. And I wish Praveen also get a chance to go abroad and study something and come back with a different sharpness of philosophizing.
Thank you, sir. Next, we have a question from Ajit. Ajit, can you ask?
Hi, am I audible?
Yes, Ajit, I can hear you.
Thank you, Sebastian sir, for the lecture today. It was very enlightening. Sir, you mentioned how in the religious literature like the Ramayana, allusions were made to the skeptic ideas too. But as may be obvious, the literature in which such allusions are situated renders their value very less and not as credible, for the reason that the larger purpose of such literature is to advocate for the religious tenets and ritualistic practices. In doing so, doesn't the author of such literature is very likely to avoid presenting rigorous arguments from the end of a skeptic? Thus, can these references be taken as the proof of a large-scale acceptance or tolerance for the skeptical lines of thoughts too? So, how likely is someone, is a layman, for example, is to also understand rigorous skeptical arguments in the Indian framework when he's reading literature like Ramayana?
You see, Ajit, Ajit, we will decipher things from bits and pieces. No, that's how your philosophical inquiry will tell you. Bits and pieces. If Javali's name is figuring out in the Ramayana, that itself is enough for me to think that there was a vibrant, what you can say, non-religious tradition which was existing there. You understand? And anything, they will write. Anybody who is writing certain things will write in their favor or his favor. That's immaterial to me. When you make a hermeneutical study of the text, I lost the connection.
So we can hear you.
Yes, sir, we can hear you, sir.
I think something is happening. Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, sir, yes, sir.
And Ajit, when we make a hermeneutical study of the understanding of a text, we are not looking at the text as such. For me, I read between the lines. I enough to get the specimen like that. There may be religious lauded teaching there, but that's not enough. There is much more than that. You get hints and you construct that with those hints. And that's your duty, my duty, to look at differently, different systems.
Yes, sir.
Ajit, I do not know, Ajit, whether I answered you, but
Sir, to some extent you did. Thank
Ajit,
you.
what do you do? What's your area of interest? What study
Sir,
are you?
I'm a third year student of philosophy honors at Zakir College, University of Delhi.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
So next we have a question from Ani. Ani, can you ask please?
Hi, good evening, everyone. Sir, so again, I am just a hobbyist here. I have no background in philosophy, so I'll just jump into the question. So you had mentioned that there were two variants in Indian tradition, the Kannada variant and the Yagnavalakya variant. So my question is, why did Indian philosophy deflect towards the Yagnavalakya tradition? Because of all the spirituality and the other things. Because if you read Kannada, you would see the germs, the stem for scientific inquiry. And since we Indians and most Asian countries did not have a scientific revolution, it was the Europeans where the scientific revolution happened. So why was that?
Friend Anni, it is something wrong that we did not have Indian subcontinent did not have scientific inventions. That's something wrong. Because if you go 20 centuries behind, the dyeing textiles, the medical machinery, the tools, these all were Indians were experts in that one. And we cannot say that today's modern science, you may say that they contribute in Western influence. But 20-25 centuries ago, Indian science per se was not that bad. It must have been one of the most outstanding scientific world of ours. And till 4th century AD, we had this trend. After that, Indian philosophizing takes a spiritual turn. With that, sarvam samaptam. You know why I am saying so? By 5th century, the Gupta dynasty takes upper hand. And the Gupta dynasty, though they are Guptas, this is a Brahminical tradition. Where spiritual Atman tradition gets upper hand. Then you have your Mimamsa thinkers, Prabhakara and Kumarila coming up in the 5th, 6th century. Then you have in the 8th century, Shankaracharya coming up. So there is a turn of what you can say, the Brahminical tradition takes upper hand. And you know, that's what my understanding. I think that is it. And Kannada tradition, had Kannada had given upper hand, India would have been a different India altogether. Professor Pagi says, and I also agree with you.
So what I see is that there was a decline in Buddhism, you know, around 4th, 5th century. It became almost non-existent, and you know,
When was that?
You know, when the Brahminical tradition started taking the upper hand. I think,
I mean, I should tell you that something more about how the decline of the Buddhists were physically terminated. Read the history. It is not the one rosy pictures of. There was huge amount of intolerance against the Buddhists, and in India, many Buddhist monks were killed. When the royal patronage of Buddhists got over, the Buddhists were physically terminated. India is not a rosy picture of India. That's it. And the decline of Buddhism is physical elimination. And it is, you may say many things rosy way, but that is not the case. So Shankara Digvijayam, what is that Digvijayam is speaking about? Why the Naga sadhus are the dharam rakshak of the Sanatana Dharma? And who is the person who is at the top, who all the Naga sadhus pay allegiance to? Shankara. Okay, so there are many things. You have to read it very carefully and read the philosophy. Annie, you know, you said something. I'm not from philosophy background. Everyone is a born philosopher. An illiterate person also is a born philosopher. Philosophy is our home turf. Even if you are doing something else, we all are philosophers. The way you think, that itself is philosophizing. Don't say that we are not philosophers.
thank you.
Thank you, sir and Nani. So we'll take just two more questions here. Sir, Harish asks, sir, should we consider Adi Shankara's teaching commentaries about Advaita Vedanta more spiritual or more epistemological version of philosophy?
Who is asking that one?
Harish Rathi.
Harish, if you take Shankara is a philosopher par excellence. So see, just to take the 3 degrees of reality he speaks about, and give up everything. 3 degrees of reality: the Paramarthika, the Vyavaharika, the Pradipasika. Okay, this is something very interesting. The moment Harish is getting out of his dream, last night he had a dream. He was going to moon. And that as long as he was in the dream and the dream was going on, it was real. You will declare that dream as dream and null and void when you are waking up and sitting in front of me now. That's different degree of reality you are reaching now. When you reach another level of reality, even this our Vartalap, our communication, that also can be unreal. So there is a logical interpretation in Shankara's understanding. Don't take him as religious thinker. And perhaps he must be one of the leading intellectuals of Indian philosophizing, I'm telling you. And if you want to give a religious card to him, you give him. But his philosophy, Advaitic position, what he argues in Brahma Sutra Bhashya is something very solid. That's it. So I have a disagreement with his position, philosophical position, but that doesn't demean his philosophical robust explanation of things. Don't consider Advaita yes, Descartes has got a different tone altogether. He said that cogito ergo sum. Descartes will say that I think, therefore I am extinct. You know what Shankara says? Sarvasya atmatvad brahmastitva prasiddhi means sabonga sarvasya atma. You have your soul, yourself, your atman itself is a proof for the existence of that Brahman.